Okay, hey YouTube, this is Film Junkie 998, and just wanted to kind of share my thoughts with you. But don't worry, there is an actual direction that I'm going in, and I will get there eventually. So just bear with me. This is full of interesting stuff, so I'm sure that if you seek knowledge, you will find it in this video. So I've been in the weird, bizarro part of YouTube for a while now, and I'm trying to. It's not too hard to distinguish the garbage from the actual legitimate weird stuff that's going on. And one of the things that I begin to question is the size of the government, for one. And you know, really, unfortunately, I think I'm going to be writing in Ron Paul instead of checking the box next to his name, because from what I understand, the Republican convention is going to remove his speaking slot unless he endorses Mitt Romney, which he has fervently said he's not going to do. He's not going to endorse Mitt Romney, and I can understand why. It's a very good reason, actually. You know, a lot of people think that libertarians are kind of a different party than, the GOP. They're not. Actually, they should be the very base, core, principled part of the GOP, as Ron Paul has repeatedly said. And that's because there's a key difference between the way that the GOP conducts its business now and the way it did 30 or 40 years ago. The early 60s, I should say. Because starting in the early 60s, the Republicans went from this kind of really, really conservative, small government party to this neoconservative, I would say fascist party that wants bigger government, more wars, and a host of different things that are totally unconstitutional, which totally, just doesn't distinguish them from the Democratic Party aside from their social principles and what they would enforce on people. So the difference between Ron Paul and other Republicans is that Ron Paul wants smaller government, not bigger government. That's the actual core principle of the Republican Party to begin with. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the Republican Party used to be. He didn't believe in this kind of conservatism is, imposing conservative values on everyone. Conservative then was an idea of everyone has their opinions and no one has the ability to enforce it on anyone else. And that's what the GOP stood for. And, I live in the country, about 10 miles away from UNC, at least 10 miles. So I bicycle to work every day, and it's a workout. But UNC, which is in Chapel Hill, it's got a wastewater treatment facility near my house. Less than a mile away. I can walk there, as opposed to bicycling over 10 or 15 miles to get to the actual campus or hospital. And it's research waste treatment facility, which means it only treats the research waste, which means the waste that's used for research and is discarded afterwards. It's primarily feces and sewage and stuff like that, but it also has some sort of medical chemicals in it. That when you go to the hospital, you see those biohazard trash cans, that stuff. Well, they have these two huge cesspools, which is a totally natural, safe way to, efficiently get rid of trash. It's not like a landfill, because it's constantly just kind of diffusing into the environment, unlike a landfill where it just builds up and then never goes away. And these cesspools are cool, except they're in a high-risk soil area, which means, if any leaks into the soil or leaches into the soil, it has a high risk of contaminating the water table in the entire area, which means me and everyone else in this entire community would be drinking contaminated wastewater, essentially. And at a public hearing last week, almost every single person that lives in this community was totally outraged by the idea that this facility is going to get even bigger. You know, this is the same area that Chapel Hill proposed putting an airport in. And both ideas I'm absolutely against. You know, there's no reason to do it here. And furthermore, I was the last speaker at that public hearing, and I posed the question why, which immediately got me nitpicked by all the people that were hosting the hearing. And I questioned the constitutionality of it as well. And I read a segment of the draft of the permit that the Division of Water Quality had sent, from North Carolina. So immediately after I spoke, the thing ended, and almost every political person or any person having to do with this came over and asked me what I meant when I questioned the constitutionality, because that's a big claim, you know. And the state guy came over from the Division of Water Quality, and he tried to explain the legal riffraff, and specifically what it said. Well, I shouldn't say specifically. Paraphrasing here, what it said was that the permittee, the person that gets the permit, has the ability to build easements, to help keep the waste contained. But since there is a leakage of this waste into nearby creeks and streams that go into other properties, it does not specifically designate that it has to be within the property. So therefore, I question the constitutionality of it, because after all, you don't want UNC or any other university to just come on your land and just start building stuff without your permission, right? So I question the constitutionality of it. And the state guy talked to me for about 10 minutes trying to explain this to me, and I had some other questions and concerns, and eventually I said, well, look, why does this have to be here? Why can't it be somewhere else? Why does this, city have to grow here? I mean, Chapel Hill is big enough, right? And the guy said, well, if we didn't put it here, we'd have to put it somewhere else, and if we put it somewhere else, the people there would be outraged, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He totally went over his head what I was asking. And what I said to him was, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why have it at all if it's just going to leak and seep into the soil? And then he said to me something that I noted and I never forgot, because this is kind of important to the attitude that the state has towards things like this, which I'm sure are happening everywhere now. He said, that this public hearing was really to just weed out the problems of these facilities. It's not really to stop or halt the project. It's to say, okay, the public concerns are this, so we're going to weed out these problems and then come back and, do our thing still. Anyways, we're not going to heed the public. We're just going to do our thing and just weed out problems so that no one can complain about it. And I've been to this facility, and UNC is a public university, by the way. Did you know that? Because I couldn't have figured that out by the giant locked gates with razor wire over them at this facility. You have to have a key card to access it, and you can't see into it. They have cameras everywhere pointed at you, and it's very obvious. I wouldn't be surprised if the fence was electric. I should get film of it and put it on YouTube so you guys can see it, because it disturbed the crap out of me. This is a public facility that people should have access to freely. What's it going to hurt if I go in there and they explain to me how the cesspools operate? I mean, really and truly, if I understood that stuff, that would help the public understanding. That would help people to say, okay, this is what UNC is doing. They screwed up, but maybe they can fix this problem because this is how it works. But they're not doing that. So it really makes me suspicious as to what the state is doing with UNC and why they have this attitude of just not caring what the people think. We are the government. Me, you, everyone else in this country is the government. The government is not this separate entity that exists outside of us and doesn't need us. That's why plagues like the Black Plague wiped out entire countries. because the government is composed of the people in the country anyways, you know? So anyways, I was getting to something, and this is it. It's getting harder and harder for me to deny this, and I'm sure that a lot of other people are thinking the same thing, because I've heard a lot of people thinking the same thing that I don't even know. I have to confess that I am a doomsday prepper now, you know. I do stockpile water. I do stockpile, you know, things that I would need to survive in case that everything just randomly shut down and stopped, you know. And I've thought it through because I was a Boy Scout, and I have done a lot of camping expeditions by myself in the middle of nowhere that I don't think any people could get to normally. And I've got a few tips. In the case of widespread power outages and, you know, the government infrastructure collapsing, you know, there's several things that you'd probably want to do. You know, and guns are actually not necessary. You know, guns are not necessary unless you have people around you that are violent, or you live in a city or something like that. Now, for me, I live in a country near a city. You know, I live in a rural area. So, in a rural area, it's not quite as bad because everyone in the community basically knows each other, or each other's families. So it's not quite as bad. But in the city, you're probably going to want to travel at night, because at nighttime, it's harder for you to see. You know, there aren't very many people with night vision goggles or anything like that. So you probably want to travel at night. You want to sleep in the day so that people don't see you and, you know, track you back to your house. And you'll also not want to take big roads, because that's just asking for it, because there are going to be a lot of businesses and people on those roads, and that's the point of avoiding them, because you don't want to be around people that can shoot you. And whenever there is a group of people, you know, inevitably there's going to be a group of people that do not like you within that group, if that made any sense. Anyways, also, a lot of people think that guns are very important, and they are pretty important, but, you know, ammunition is limited. So I would say that guns are not as important as things like food. You know, you need food, you need water to survive. I would stockpile oil for oil lamps as opposed to ammunition. Because, yeah, I'm going to need a gun. But you know what? I have 3 guns. I don't need any more guns, you know? And they're not even, like, that efficient. They just do their job. You know, and their job is killing things. So, if you're a peaceful conservative like me, you're not going to want to kill many people. And I certainly don't. So, guns are lower on my priority list. You know, I have about 23, 22 gallons of water that, no, 25 gallons of water that I could have instantly, you know, stockpiled. You know, and these are just water gallon jugs that I buy at the store. And I also have this huge 15-gallon jug thing I bought at Walmart. But, you know, that was a little extreme. But, you know, it's for the purposes of traveling. If you're traveling, you're going to need water. And food. Canned food is great. But what's more important than canned food, or food that you can stockpile, non-perishable items, is the ability to produce food. That's a lot more important. And to be honest with you, I confess I'm still working on this one. Okay, so a lot of farmers in olden times would seed their own crops, which means they would have a yield of corn, and then they would save a bushel or two of corn, or a barrel of corn or so, for the next year. So the next year, that corn would ripen, and then they would just plant the old corn to produce new corn. Now that is something I've been working on, like pumpkins. You take the seeds out of a pumpkin, dry them, put them in your freezer. Next spring, or whenever you want to plant them, you can plant them. Pecans, things like that. And those are key, because what happens when your food runs out, you know? You've got to go into the city, or you've got to travel around the city. You know, if you're in a rural area, you know, you're going to want to stay where you're at. You're not going to want to move around a lot, because that's going to be risky. So, food is definitely a huge part of that. And there's actually a lot of very disturbing events that are making that more difficult, and that's called geoengineering. There's a video I'll probably link in this video description. But just these things that I've been thinking about that are really bothering me. Okay, another thing. You want old technology. Do not buy new technology. Like, this computer is an exception. I use this computer to network with people. But like a washing machine or a microwave or anything like a TV, anything like that. You know, all the people say that the old ones are better, or that the new ones are better. I'm sorry, but the old ones are not. They're not as good. Okay, but they're not going to have the government staring at you while you're watching, Hogan's Heroes or whatever. They're not. Cell phones are the same way. But you really can't use cell phones that are that old. So I just avoid using them except whenever possible. I don't even usually keep them on my person. See, like right now, that's my cell phone battery. You know, I don't like to keep it in my cell phone because I don't want to go to sleep with the thought that the government is listening to me as I sleep. That's pretty disturbing. So I just take the battery out, and that's unilaterally effective. But anyways, back to old technology. Older cars. Cars are a good one because there's so many electronics and things in cars today. They just simply won't hold up. First of all, working on newer cars is extremely difficult because they are designed to wear out, and they're designed so that you have to take them into the dealership so that they, replace parts and whatnot, and charge you exorbitant fees. Someone always makes money off of that. So I would say older cars. They're more reliable. I personally chose a Jeep Cherokee because I feel that I don't have to put huge tires on them to get places. It's good just the way it is, and it's reliable. Now, if you're going that way, and you're in a rural area like I am, or say there's a shortage of fuel, you'll want to go with diesel, and there's a good reason for that too, because diesel motors are designed to run off of any kind of oil. They don't have spark plugs, because there's no explosion in the engine. Gasoline engines have explosions in them, which power the valves, which turn the wheels. And that's a really simple way of putting it, but that's basically how it works. And that's why gasoline engines don't last as long. You see those diesel cars from the 80s? That's why they're still around, because they're diesel. Diesel motors simply take longer to wear out. 500, 600,000 miles isn't, unheard of. It's actually pretty common. But 500, 600,000 miles in a gas engine, that's pretty wicked crazy there. So I would say if you're going for that kind of independent, not going to the city at all, go with diesel, because you can convert it to vegetable oil. The original engine was run off of peanut oil. It can run with gasoline too, although it's not. It would wear it out very quickly. Um, just pure vegetable oil, you can just pour it right in, but it'll congeal up in the wintertime, so you have to kind of convert it to that use. But these are just some thoughts that I've had, over a few months of this kind of thing. One last note. Starting fire is extremely important, okay? You've got to have the ability to have fire, because fire is how you cook, and it's how you produce things. You can use fire to do a lot of things. So, matches, lighters, torches, whatever you would start a fire with. Find different ways to start fires. Like, for instance, you take two batteries and put them together, the same way, facing the same direction. And then you take steel wool and put it on the two ends of the batteries that are facing outwards. The steel wool will light on fire, and it's super hot. So just throw it on something that's, like a piece of paper, and it'll catch on fire. Just wanted to share with you some of my thoughts on government and just in general the world as it is today. So anyways, leave a comment and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.